Okay, we're technically live, but let me just make sure that it goes on to, give me a second. Just need to wait for it to go on.
Yep.
I'm just waiting for it to, there it is, all right. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to my regular Wednesday night live stream. Today I have one of Australia's leading pioneers, I'd say, in the conservative movement, someone who's been in the fight for over 20 years, Bill Muehlenberg, who has his own website, Culture Watch, where he writes reviews, among other things, and has discussions on many different subject matters, the family unit, being pro-life, and reviews books. Here we have the very lovely Bill Muehlenberg. Hello.
Hey, great to join you.
It's very good to have you on. I'm really excited. I've had many people say you need to get Bill on your channel. You need to get Bill on your channel, and so now you are on my channel. So
Well, good to have a few people supporting me.
Yeah, you definitely
It offsets
do.
all the critics, actually.
What's funny is that majority of people wrongly think that you are Jewish.
Yeah. Well, look, I've got the Berg at the end of my name, maybe the big nose. I'm not sure. There's, and I quite identify actually with the Jewish people, but no, I've come from German Lutheran stock, and it's kind of in that network, but not quite.
Not quite, but that's okay. We love all human beings, so that's fine. Yep. Okay, well, I think the first place to start is from the beginning, and obviously you have an accent. So from what we know, from what I'm aware, you are German stock, but you are born in America. Is that correct?
Yep, American, but I am for about the last 30 years living here in Australia.
Yes, and so why did you move to this country?
Well, pretty good reason. When I was a missionary in Europe for 5 years in Holland, there was an Australian gal who kind of struck my interest. So I chased her around a bit. She was a bit slow to, see the light, but eventually she did. So, yeah, my wife is Australian. So we got married way back in 1982. We went back to Holland for a few years, back to America for a few years. And about 1989, we shifted here to Australia and been here ever since.
Do you go back to America a lot? I mean, I'm assuming you have brothers and sisters and cousins.
Yeah, I do. Look, mind you, it's expensive to get back, but mind you, about a month and a half ago, my wife and I did go back for 2 weeks in Wisconsin, where the family is. So we had a great time there for 2 weeks, catching up with brother and sister, and yeah, we do that about maybe once every 3-4 years when we can afford it. But it is, huh?
2 weeks is not enough. You need at least 2
weeks. I know. Sure. But well, look, we got 2 dogs and a cat and 3 boys that we have to look after here, so we can't stay away too long.
Where do you live? I will house it. It's fine.
Well, hey, that would help. I am in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, so I'll take you up on the.
Oh, you're in Melbourne. Oh, I totally hook you up.
There you go. Okay, we'll go back to America. You can house sit for a month and.
Done.
Good.
But your sons can take care of themselves. I'm not babysitting them.
Well, mind you, there's only one son who's actually still here. The other 2 have moved out. So, and he's off and in and out as well. So often there's nobody here to look after 2 dogs and a cat. So that'll be your job.
Okay, done.
Good.
It's been stated verbally on camera. You can't back out now.
We hold you to it. That's it.
Yeah. One of the ladies in the comments, she has 7 children, but somehow she thinks she can house it with me. No, Margot, no. She's the one that thought you were Jewish, by the way.
All right. Oh well, we'll get on to her and straighten her out.
We'll straighten her out. Yep. Okay, so part of how I advertised this particular discussion was that you were a former leftie, because in our conversations leading up to tonight, you said that was a reality in your life. So how do you describe the fact that you were a lefty, and how has the left changed from when you were a lefty to what leftism is now? I think that's a very valid question.
Yeah, well, I was very much part of it. The late 60s, early 70s, that was probably before you were born, mind you, but
It was.
you
Thank
know,
you.
the radical hippie culture, the counterculture, the new
Mhm.
left, Woodstock, the whole bit. I was pretty heavily involved in all of that. That was my kind
You were
of
a hippie.
scene, huh? Well, yeah, you know, hair, hair halfway down to my waist, and the whole bit.
Peace.
Drug dealer, peace, love, rock and roll. You bet.
Mm,
Yeah, that was my scene. So that was very much my involvement. However, that got cut short at about age 18 when I became a Christian.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, it was pretty
Yeah.
radical.
No, but
Radical.
that's still
Yeah.
pretty young.
Well, it is. Well, look, I was selling drugs and editing underground newspapers as a 15, 16-year-old. So I was pretty
Wow.
young.
Yeah, you
Most
were.
kids
That's
who
so
were in
young.
college. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was pretty hardcore, but a Christian conversion really led me out of that.
Okay.
But sure, the left has gone on and gotten worse. I mean, you just look at, say, the Democratic Party in America right now. It's just so hardcore left. It's really quite shocking what they're on about. So things have gotten worse with the left. So I'm glad I bailed out back in
Mm,
1971 is when my conversion. So
that's
I've
fantastic.
shifted to the more conservative side of things since then.
Can I ask you, and if you don't want to answer, and if I'm saying something rude or inappropriate, just tell me, and I'll move
Yep.
right on.
Yep.
But were you? I don't know if I should ask it. Were you? Did you participate in all of the hippie activities, sex and drugs, all of that?
Oh, yep.
Okay, sorry,
certainly
I wasn't
the
sure if that was appropriate.
certainly. Well, yeah. Look, the drug scene heavily involved. I was a dealer in high school. I sold drugs to my high school friends. Actually, I wrote up a while ago my testimony. It's a 10,000 word,
Mm,
4-part testimony on my website, Culture Watch. So if you
mm.
want all the gory details, you'll get it there. But yeah, for 2, 3 years easily, I was quite involved in drugs. At one point, we kind of kept record that for 50 days in a row, we were high on something, whether it was LSD or marijuana or hashish. So this was my high.
Hashish isn't, I don't think, a drug. That's just like a scented smoke.
Oh, look, no, it's certainly a hallucinogenic drug. It certainly gets
Oh,
you high.
I've had it, but it doesn't do anything.
Well, you know it if you really had it, because it really is a mind bender.
Oh, I didn't
So
have anything like that. I just
yeah,
had the taste, like the diluted silly one that you have.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I didn't have anything
Well,
bad.
this is something we smoked, and it really got you pretty far out. That's for sure. Oh yeah, big time.
Mm. Uh,
So anyway,
were you promiscuous as well, or was it just the drugs?
yeah. Well, look, for me, while many of my friends were promiscuous and sex, love, rock and roll, for some reason, God kind of spared me from that. So that was one area that I was kept from. All
Oh,
the other, yeah, all the other stuff I was into pretty heavy, but
mhm.
thankfully in that area, even I was fully supportive of it and willing to run with it. But
It just never happened.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Just curious. Okay, sorry. Well, so what happened? And I don't mean to get too religious, and I know that the people watching, some people like
yep.
this subject, some people don't, but I'm gonna ask, what happened? Did one day someone say to you, "Do you want to come to church with me?" And you were like, "Sure." Like, what? All of a sudden, did you notice that your life was self-destructing? Like, what made you click to the gospel? What made that resonate to you?
Yep. Well, look, partly it was that I was very suicidal at the time, very depressed. I tried all kinds of Eastern religions. Timothy Leary said you could find God on LSD, so I did a lot of LSD. Guess what? I didn't find God. I found a lot of other stuff, but I sure wasn't God. So, I was on a search. I was looking. So I read, stuff like the Tibetan Book of the Dead or the Bhagavad Gita or, all this Eastern religion, New Age stuff. I was really searching, but none of it satisfied. So, yeah, I was bummed out, depressed, suicidal. So partly I was desperate. So, yeah, an old hippie friend of mine came and told me one day she had found the gospel, found
Mm,
a Christian group in the mountains of New Mexico.
mm,
She came back to Wisconsin, told me about it. I was so desperate. I thought, okay, yep, sounds good to me. So the next day, the two of us hitchhiked back 2,000 miles to the mountains of New Mexico, joined this kind of Jesus commune.
mm.
And that was the start of my religious journey. Again, you can read about it on my website, but
I've linked
yeah, it
the
was pretty
website in the
hardcore.
description box below. I've done that. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah, so look, it's quite a story. I think, well, God's grace, obviously, in the end, because well, look, some of my hippie friends in the teenage years either did commit suicide
Oh,
or they died of drug overdoses.
yeah.
So look, I should have been in the same camp. I should have died of a drug overdose. I should have, in fact, I was suicidal, but God's grace kept me.
Mm,
So, unlike a lot of my friends, I made it through. And then at the age of 18, I became a Christian. So, that was the end of my radical left
mm.
experience and the start of something new.
So, okay, the left in those days was about no boundaries on sex and
Yep.
and that kind of thing. That's still technically part of their agenda today. The difference is that it's seeped into and they would argue against this because they come onto my Facebook page and they constantly say, "What the hell are you talking about? It's the Catholic Church and it's the religious groups that are the most
Eh,
rampant when it comes to pedophilia." But obviously, us on the right would say, "Well, no, it's on the left where it's happening. You're the one sexualizing children. You're the one
Yep.
encouraging pedophilia by calling it intergenerational love and all that kind of stuff." So,
Yep.
how would you say it's changed? Is it more open now? Is it still just as secretive, or like what are the differences between the left today and the left of the 60s and the 70s of the hippie era?
Well, mind you, a lot of what we see today was already there in seminal form in the 60s. I mean, we had the radical sexual liberation marches. They were calling for the end of age of consent. They were calling for group sex. They were calling for, the delegalization of all things pornography and so on. So that's been called on for, over 50 years now. Now we're just seeing the bitter fruit of the sexual revolution. Now we're seeing it all being played out, right? So we've had the homosexual revolution, we've had homosexual marriage legalized. Now we're seeing the whole trans revolution that
Yeah.
nobody was talking about 5 years ago. And now we're seeing the push for polygamy, polyamory, the whole
Mm,
bit. So look, as day follows night, once you go down this path, we warned for decades. There is a slippery slope. When you go down this path, eventually nothing is forbidden. Everything is open. So look, eventually bestiality, incest, that'll be part of it. But right now, the call for polyamory, the call for sexuality is simply a social construct that has
good.
nothing to do with biology. I mean, this is big time, and we warned about this years ago, and now we're seeing it played out.
There's the word, one of the words that is a leading word at the moment is pansexual. So if you're a
Yep,
pansexual,
yep,
you don't care if it's gay, if it's straight, if it's um, trans male, trans woman, or non-gender conforming. So
yep,
a lot of people are now identifying as pansexual. Miley Cyrus is one of those morons,
yep,
and they come across as more open and loving because they'll accept anyone. But
sure.
it just I find it disgusting. It freaks me out.
Yeah. Well, look, where does this stop? Some people have a sexual attraction to children. Some people
Mm,
have a sexual attraction to a group of people. I mean, there's no end, really. Once you say love is love without defining that carefully, once you decimate the traditional understanding of marriage, the union of a man and a woman for life, well, anything goes. And that's exactly what we now find. Now we find group sex, polyamory. Now we find the idea that, oh, well, intergenerational love, as you say, if you got a thing about children, well, hey, who am I to judge? Who am I to say it's wrong? If it's consensual, if it's, it's all cool. So all the things we've been warning about are coming to pass really fast, and it's quite scary.
It's very scary. Do you think that when it comes to things like, what was I going to say, polyamory, and, okay, for example, many would say, well, you're only talking about the left. We always talk about the left, but I'm actually not that close-minded. I think on the right, we have a much broader spectrum and more variables change. We can disagree on the right respectfully, whereas on the left, that doesn't really exist. And I would say that the people who advocate for polyamory also exist on the right. Those are the FLDS Mormons. They have like sister wives, and then you have obviously in the Catholic Church and in and many rabbis and do the act of pedophilia on children. I can acknowledge that, but people are under the impression that those of us on the right are in an echo chamber and that we don't know these things. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, look, there's certainly aberrations on the right. It's not part of the worldview of the right. If a Christian commits abuse of children, that goes against everything that their Christian faith teaches. So, but on the other hand, when the left promotes it, they say, hey, this is cool. This is acceptable. We want this. So that's a big difference as to Mormonism and some aspects of it, which were polygamist. Well, first of all, mainstream Christianity has always seen that as a fringe group, not exactly Orthodox Christianity.
Well, I don't even mean general Mormonism. I mean the FLDS, like the fringe Mormons.
That's right. That's right.
Just to clarify, in case there are Mormons watching me saying, "Oh, she hates Mormons." I don't hate anyone. I don't hate Mormons. I'm referring to the offshoot of the Mormons.
Yep. That's right. So again, biblical Christianity has always affirmed male-female marriage is the one outlet for human sexuality. All other forms are not to be pushed. And whereas the other side, the left, not only pushes it, they say they celebrate it. They say this is cool. Yeah, of course they do. So there's a big difference here. Christians who may go down this path are going against their own faith, whereas the left who pushes this are fully affirming their own sexual ideology.
Yes, I agree. Also, what the left does is that I don't know if you've seen that little 11-year-old boy who dresses in drag, and then he's around other drag queens who are half naked. And the left says, yeah, praise to him. He knows who he is. Woo! Like it's a good thing. The left also has a movement called #ShoutYourAbortion. Woo! Be proud of killing your babies. They literally are trying to promote what is wrong just so that they can make themselves, I suppose, feel better, because I suppose there's a spiritual battle going on in their head and they don't want to accept that Jesus is the answer. So instead they try to make themselves feel better by promoting sin.
Yep. Oh, look, the whole drag scene and the kids dancing before the adults. I mean, look, this is every pedophile's dream. Come on. In fact, we got videos of kids rolling around on guys who are drag queens on the floor. I mean, they're getting their rocks off. They're having a great time. This is called child abuse. And the amazing thing is some parents think this is cool. They're happy to run with this. And when we get in public libraries, the drag queen story times and so on,
I know.
That's fun. This is madness.
Yeah, it's very pathetic. It's very sad, and it's happening really at a much faster rate. Like from the time when you met your wife and you became a Christian, it was a lot slowly moving. Obviously, there was transgenderism, and obviously there were all these problems. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that a person who is transgendered is a problem. That's not a very nice thing to say. But in terms of the movement being politicized, that is a problem.
Yeah.
And you're right in saying that in 2015, the whole transgender movement went whoosh.
Yes.
So once Bruce Jenner came out, it became, it stopped being a medical issue and became automatically a politicized issue. And
Yep.
like, how many more issues are left for them to politicize? Like, what's left?
Yeah, well, look, they'll keep coming up with more and more, no question. I mean, the truth is, back in 1971, when I was the hippie culture, the radical left, the
Yeah.
new left, the whole bit,
Mm,
we were on the fringes of society. We
mm.
were the minority, but
Yeah.
I hate to say it, we were successful. We actually overtook society, and now the radical left has become mainstream. And
I know.
guess who is yeah, well, look, guess who's now on the fringes of society? You and me.
Yeah.
We're the new minority. We're the outcast. We're the new counterculture. Mainstream has been taken over by all the lefties. Half of my lefty friends are now, politicians, mayors,
Mm,
lawyers, doctors. And by the way, this was deliberate. We targeted the institutions of power and influence. So when I was a kid, high school kid, guess what? I took classes in journalism so we could capture the media. I took classes in political science so we could capture politics. This was
mm.
deliberate. We were trying to capture the institutions of power and influence. And guess what? We won. The left won. They took over most of Western societies. Now I've defected. Now I'm a traitor from all that.
You're an
But,
apostate.
well, I am. I'm an apostate. So but look, that's the story. What was the fringe 50 years ago is now mainstream, and you and I are now on the fringe, we're trying to reclaim the culture.
Yeah, well, your generation failed us.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We did. Absolutely.
No, that's okay. This question just came into my mind. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but I was curious. What were your thoughts on Jonestown?
Oh, look, I recall that happening. I mean, well, look, there are such thing as Christian cults.
Mm.
Whenever you have the real deal, you can get fake substitutes, and if you're a
Exactly.
Christian, you
I've read
know that.
about it.
Yeah, well, look, Satan is the expert at counterfeiting things, giving us a fake run. Trump talks about fake news. There's fake religious groups. So Jonestown was an example. People were searching, people were looking for answers. Unfortunately, they got sucked into this guy and his cult.
Mm.
And well, the result was, well, a lot of death and destruction.
900, the largest mass suicide
Yeah,
ever in history.
yeah. So, that's something to be worried about, but that doesn't take away from the real deal. There's always fakes, but that doesn't nullify the real thing, in this case, biblical Christianity.
Well, the reason I suppose I asked was because when I think of Jonestown, when I think of the country of Guyana, I think of hippies. Because the
Well,
video footage is so like miscegenated. You have blacks and whites together, and you have this
yeah.
man who says he can heal people. It just seems so like, and your Facebook profile photo just reminds me of Jonestown, just that
Yeah.
whole era. Just
Well, again, there's something to it. Yeah. I mean, us hippies, many of us were looking for a better world. We're looking for nirvana. We're looking for heaven on earth. We wanted to bring in a peaceful,
mm,
harmonious society. I think we were, building on the sand instead of the rock. We had the
mm.
wrong foundation, so it could not succeed. But many of our aspirations, many of our desires, I think were good. So remember, at the same time that the whole radical hippie culture was going on in the late 60s, God also raised up what we call the hippie culture, the Jesus revolution. That took place at the same time. So you
Mm.
had the fake news, you had the whole hippie scene, but then God raised up the Jesus revolution, and I was a part of that. I got saved in the Jesus revolution, 1971, as an 18-year-old stoned out hippie, and many millions, hundreds,
Mm.
thousands of kids in that scene got saved.
Yeah.
So, there were some good aspirations, some good ideas, let's live together in peace and harmony. But of course, unless the Prince of Peace is there with you, it's never going to work. It's just a humanistic attempt, which is bound to fail. And so we did fail.
The wise man built his house upon the rock.
That's it.
Oh, that's yeah. Well, I'm glad you found Christ. That's really special, and that's where the fire in your belly started when it came to trying to change the world, I suppose, because you became a missionary.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, again, as I keep telling people, I had a desire for truth, for justice, for what is right back in my non-Christian days. I think God put
Mm,
that there. So I would edit underground newspapers. I would, do demonstrations. I would do all this stuff.
mm,
Passion for justice and truth. I was wrong-headed, but I believe God put it there. So when I did become a Christian, 1971, God took those passions and desires and gifts that he put in me as a pagan, and he used it now for the kingdom. So yeah, now I got a website. Now I do interviews with neat people like you. Now I do all this stuff. But I think God was aware all along. All right, Bill, I've got a plan for your life.
mm.
I'm going to put in this passion for truth and justice. Sure, it'll go off the rails a bit until you get saved, but then He'll use it for His purposes. And so, yeah, I think in some ways, even my wild, rebellious, drug addicted youth wasn't fully wasted. God can even redeem the past.
Would you say that the lefties of today have the same motivation as you do, that they feel like they're fighting for something, or do you think they are purposely fighting for the wrong thing to be able to do the wrong thing? Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Oh, look, I think more so in, 60s and 70s, many of us were concerned about what was right. Many of us were concerned. We thought America was the evil empire. We thought capitalism was evil. The military industrial complex was evil, blah, blah, blah.
But that's what you thought then. Do you
Yeah.
think the lefties today?
Well, I'm not too sure. Yeah, I think today it's some of that has been lost. It's really degenerated into a hatred of the West, hatred of America, hatred of Christianity, hatred of values.
Mm,
There'd be some on the left who are still seeking, some on the left who are still have honest concerns about this, but I'm afraid a lot of it is degenerated into just a kind of a knee-jerk reaction against America, the West, and Christianity.
yeah. Well, there's been in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a new crop of conservative Australians doing their bit on YouTube, on Facebook, using the social media, as well as attending rallies, going to like pro-life marches and those sorts of things. But you've been at this for over 20 to 25 years, is that correct?
Yeah, well, 30 years. Moved here in '89. Been doing it ever since. 30 years. Yep.
So what are your thoughts on some of the activists today? Have you heard of many of the Australian ones who are going to court at the moment, who are trying to, like, what are your thoughts on like people like Blair Cottrell and those sorts of people?
Yeah. Well, look, there is a whole new generation of conservative Christian activists. I mean, you are one of them, right? 5 years
Yeah,
ago,
but I'm not
I never
sure.
heard of you 5 years ago, and there's quite a few like you, and so I praise God. I'm getting kind of old, Eventually, I'm going to pass away, Uh,
We have
uh,
eternal life.
well, so it's exciting to know that a new group of young, active conservatives and Christians are fighting the good fight. So I know a lot of the old culture warriors, but I know most of the new young ones as well. So it's very exciting because you think, oh, look, it's just a bunch of old fuddy duddies like myself. Once we die, it's all over. But God has raised up people like you, many others, young people who have the same passion, the same concerns.
Mm.
So that's good news. I'm very excited.
And what do you think, if you had to pinpoint one thing that could improve the country, what do you think the word is? Because I think that the one thing that would improve Australia would be freedom of speech. I think that is the core of everything else. But maybe you have a different response, and I'm just curious what you think. I didn't realize that my makeup looks so weird. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, look, that would be keen. That would be a crucial issue. Mind you, for a long time, I used to say that there were three crises that we face in Australia and the West. I said the crisis of truth, the crisis in the life issues, and the crisis in human sexuality. So certainly those are three ongoing issues that we have to deal with. I mean, you could talk about others, the crisis of Islam and the risk that poses, creeping Sharia and all the rest. So those are some of the big battlefronts. I'm not sure if I could single out just one. I think all these issues are important, whether it's the abortion battles, the battles for human sexuality, the fight over truth and absolutes. So yeah, these are all big ticket items.
I think something that this is me going on a tangent again, something that really shocks me is the sex stuff. Like, how much more liberated sexually can people really do they need to fight? Like, it's not that hard to not have sex. So I don't understand what they want. They've gotten everything they possibly need. Years ago, before you and I were born, they got rid of the moral laws. The moral laws are if you were caught cheating on your husband, that would have been a criminal offense. They got rid of that. Okay, so that's good. But now and then it became, oh, you should be prostitution should be legalized and all of these different things, and then trying to sodomy and then all these other types of sex and all these different, and then from that you have variations of gender expressions and sexual orientations. What more do they need? I don't get how much for, like, you can have all the sex you want. So I don't understand what more they need, and I don't understand why it's so bad to the left to promote virginity and to promote what's the word, abstinence. I don't understand. What do you think it is coming from that previous mindset?
Oh, look, I mean, the truth is you can live without sex. You can't live without eating. You can't live without breathing. But you actually can live without sex. But we've elevated this to kind of a godlike status. But again, the bigger picture is vital here. We have to go back, right? Remember, classic Marxism. Big part of its agenda was to destroy the family unit, to destroy traditional morality. They knew that was how they were going to push their agenda. You destroy the family, you destroy marriage, you destroy traditional sexual mores, and that's how you're going to impose the revolution. Now, mind you, even in Russia, after they did this in the Soviet Union, they got into so much strife, they eventually called off the dogs. They stopped some of the war against marriage and family because they saw how counterproductive it was being. But this is always part and parcel of the radical left agenda. If you want to destroy the West, if you want to push your agenda, you have to attack Christian morality, you have to attack marriage and family. So this is as much an ideological battle as it is just, people trying to, do their thing in any way possible, sexually speaking. So this is it's an ideological war, and it's being pushed deliberately.
Well, all of that everything you just said, that it's Marxism, that's probably the political word for it. But because everything under Marxism, like the word feminism comes under Marxism, the words transgenderism comes under Marxism, the word atheism comes under Marxism. But if we look outside of the political realm, the word for it in general is Satanism almost, or something similar to that.
Yeah. Oh, look, if you're a Christian, that's no question. That is your bottom line. There is a personal malevolent being known as Satan who's fully opposed to everything that God believes in. So if God affirms the goodness of human sexuality, marriage, family, and so on, well, guess what? Satan is going to run against every single one of those items. So that is our spiritual explanation of what's going on. Satan hates marriage. He hates
Yeah.
family. He hates morality. He hates God. So, of course, he's going to work to destroy the church. He's going to work to destroy marriage, on and on it goes. So that's the Christian or spiritual answer. And as you say, that plays itself out with cultural Marxism, with the
Mm.
whole radical left scene. They're simply doing his bidding, if you will.
Yeah, it's really tragic. And so in your time in Australia, you've been on Channel 9, you've been on Channel 7, you've been on Channel 10, you've been on every single network, you've been a sought after figurehead to discuss your pro-life views, to discuss your pro-family unit views. And I find that really fascinating. So do you want to talk a bit about that part of your life and yeah, what led up to all of that?
Yeah, well, look, it's not happening as much anymore, so that
Hey,
tells
I
you
saw you
something.
out.
Well, that's no, it's quite revealing. I mean, at one point, I was constantly being called by the media. Now, partly it was because I was with various national groups, the Australian Family Association, Focus on the Family, whereas now I'm kind of doing my own thing with Culture Watch. So that's part of it. But
Mm,
the other part is simply that whereas before I could actually get a word in, I could not just get a lot of letters to the editor, to the newspapers. I would have full articles printed. I mean, we're talking Melbourne Age, right? Sydney Morning Herald. Today it's just almost impossible. You cannot easily get a conservative letter in the Age or the
mm,
Herald Sun or any of the main newspapers. You can't certainly get an article. I
mm.
mean, I recall back in 1994, I was heading up the Australian Family Association. It was the International Year of the Family. So
Oh,
we had a week long conference at the University of Melbourne. And
okay.
at the
I was
same
about to think.
time, this was hardcore. At
Mm.
the same time, Martina Navratilova, the lesbian tennis player,
Oh, yes, I
came
remember.
out and said, I'd like to have kids. I'd like to have a family. So I actually wrote a piece, sent it to the Melbourne Age, and
Oh,
it was actually printed, a 1,000-word article. I
mm,
said, look, Martina is a great tennis player,
mm,
but she would make a lousy father. Children need a mother and a father. And the Melbourne Age actually printed that article, as did
mm,
many newspapers printed my stuff. Today, it's almost impossible. You cannot get a pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith
mm.
article in almost any of the newspapers. So there's been a radical shift. And yeah, today it's very hard to get anything in the mainstream media.
Yeah, because we've devolved. That's how much our society and culture has devolved
Yeah.
into satanic madness. Um, one of the people in the comment section wants to know what your views are on family law.
Oh, well, there's different aspects to family law. Much of it tends to be very anti fathers. When you have custody cases, a marriage breakup, divorce, and so on,
Mm,
in about 85-90% of the cases, the mother will get custody of the children.
yeah,
Often the father loses all access to the kids. They can't even see them. In fact, I know of
that's
personal
Julia
cases.
Gillard.
Yeah,
Julia
I
Gillard.
know. Yeah.
Mm,
I know of cases where dads have, the wife has walked out, taken the kids, and they can't even see their own kids. So
mm,
that's one aspect. It's very much led by feminist theory. It's
mm.
very anti family. It's very anti male. So we need a major reform in the Family Law Act and the family law courts.
Mm.
So that's just one of many battlefronts that we have with the left taking over all the institutions of power and influence.
Yes, this is very true. I didn't actually know that about the family law. I found out recently because I interviewed Ricardo Bossi.
Yep.
Do you know that guy?
Yep.
Yeah. So I interviewed him, and through him, I found out that Julia Gillard really destroyed Australian fathers by removing perjury.
Mm.
Um, and so I've actually just made a video, which I'm going to release on Saturday or Sunday, called "Have Women Ruined Politics?"
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that might ruffle a few feathers, but anyway,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, so it's really disappointing that that the agenda of everyone else, minus men, is being elevated.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you're a Christian woman and you don't identify as a white woman and you happen to be a first-generation Australian like myself, who happens to be a Christian, you know, that's not a good thing, because you should be a lefty. It's like being a black person in America, you should be a Democrat, but if you choose to be a Republican, you are hated on.
Yeah. Sure. Oh,
Yeah,
look, it's tough days to be both conservative and Christian. We are the new persecuted minority. I mean, come on.
so true.
Homosexuals are the flavor of the month, the trans, you name it. They're all fully accepted, fully endorsed, fully
Mm.
celebrated. But the one boogeyman, the one evil group is, well, you and me. We're the bad guys.
So stupid. I actually interviewed, by the way, I don't know if you know, have you heard of a man named Walt Heyer or Walt
Yeah,
Heyer?
yeah, yeah. I know Walt. Yep.
Yeah, well, he's a friend, and he's obviously a friend of his. Wow, we really know all of the same people. That's
Yep.
hilarious.
Sure.
But he's yeah, so he used to identify as Laura, and
Yep.
and I understand that his particular story is individual, and that I shouldn't be representing him as the whole entire trans movement, but it's still a good indicator that there is such a thing as trans regret. But you
Yeah.
never hear about the word trans regret. You never hear those two words together, particularly in mainstream media, because there's an agenda in transgenderism as well. It's the same
Yeah.
thing with what you were saying regarding Marxism. The agenda is, let's make our men as confused and as effeminate as we can, so that we can't build good families. It all goes back to the family unit. It all
Yeah.
goes back to that, don't you find?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No question. And not only is it, mom, dad, but it's the kids. The well being of children is being totally ignored here. Easy divorce has been disastrous for children. The radical homosexual agenda has been disastrous for children. The trans agenda has been disastrous for children.
Mm.
All of this is really a war against our kids. So Walt Heyer, who's been there and done that, he did the trans thing and now he's moved on. Well, look, he's one of these invisible people. He's not supposed to exist. Everybody celebrates the trans guy, but if you have regret about your transition, then all of a sudden you no longer exist. The
It's
same with ex-homosexuals, right?
yes.
They're invisible. They don't,
Trying to
I
get
know
more
many of them. Yeah,
yeah. I'm
I
trying to
know plenty.
find I'm trying
Yeah.
to find a former homosexual on my. I've seen a couple of people on YouTube who have interesting stories about how they came out of their homosexuality, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to find someone to interview with that.
Oh, look, I know heaps. I know heaps here in Melbourne.
Really?
Easy piece of
Oh,
cake. I'll give
yeah.
you 10 of them.
Okay.
Easy.
Hook me up after this
I
interview. Hook me
will.
up to one or two of them that
We're,
have an
we're the
interesting
hookup
story.
culture. We'll make it happen. That's
Oh,
right.
lovely. That would be so good, because I've been reaching out to some and they haven't responded, and they're all American, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, there's plenty here in Australia.
that's good. Okay, thank you. I actually really appreciate that. See, I'm networking while I'm talking to you.
That's it.
Go me. All right. So I wanted to show some of the people watching. So I'm going to get rid of the screen that we're in, because I
Yep.
want to do a share screen, because I want to show people the kinds of things that are written about you and how much hate you actually get. So I hope no one minds. I'm just going to quickly go to screen share, your entire screen share. And I'm just going to go to Ration Wiki. So according to here, it says, Bill Muehlenberg is an American Australian Christian and homophobic, transphobic hate leader. He is secretary of the Family Council of Victoria and lectures in ethics and philosophy at various Melbourne, Australia theological colleges, where he lives with his 3 sons and his wife. He was born in the United States with a BA with honors in philosophy, Wheaton College, Chicago, and an MA with highest honors in theology, Gordon Conwell Theology Seminary. Okay, so then it says here, on his blog Culture Watch, he publishes rants such as the top 20 myths pushed by homosexual activists. He strongly supports the death penalty because the Bible says so. He believes Darwin is to blame for Hitler. He also writes for Creation Ministries International's website, creation.com, and he hates Muslims too. That half of this I know is lies. He strongly opposes Donald Trump's presidency candidacy because the American billionaire is an ungodly man. like that pagan kings. Anyway, I just think it's really funny. I just thought I'd read. I just thought I'd read the majority of it. Just the last bit as well. Yet after a 2,000-word grandstanding lecture on the topic, Bill concedes in the comments that he may grudgingly vote for Trump, which goes to show how much Bill's verbose articles lack basic coherence. Okay, I'll take it off the screen share. I just thought that really... Wow, they don't like you.
No, they don't. Oh, look, there's plenty of those pages. I used to have a wiki page, a fake page. I mean, there's been entire websites set up simply to attack me.
I know. I can see.
I know. I mean,
I have a wiki page. Congratulations.
Well, you must be doing something right when they spend all their time. I think, have you got nothing better to do? Go out for a walk, take your dog, look at the blue skies. Yeah. They spend their whole time, attacking me and telling lies about me. I never said death should be for homosexuals. I never said that we should hate Muslims. It's just lies, lies, lies. It's typical of the left. They lie their heads off. But yeah, it's there's page after page, website after website, people attacking me. So yeah, I get the daily hate mail. I get the occasional death threats. This is what we call the love brigade, the left view of tolerance, acceptance, diversity, inclusion. This is how the left operates. They hate anybody who doesn't agree with them, and they're happy to denigrate them, tell lies about them, and set up entire websites to make them look like Hitler's younger brother.
I just can't believe they what's funny is that we defend, okay, so you and I'm assuming you're on the same page regarding Islam, that the ideology itself is not one that is particularly positive. The left embraces it. Okay, good for you. The left embraces it. Congratulations, you're more inclusive than we are, whatever. However, we, by opposing the ideology of Islam, but embracing the people, we are actually showing more love for the gay community, because it is in Islam that you are throwing gay people off roofs. I don't want gay people being killed for being gay. I don't want anyone being killed for any reason. I don't want anyone hurting people on the left. But the people on the left wish probably that we were thrown off roofs. The people on the left hate us so much that they write websites and they try to get people fired from jobs and all that kind of stuff. But you and I literally are coming from a place of compassion, whereas they're not. I don't know whether they realize how moronic their thinking is. It's so circular.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's madness. I mean, as you say, the left's love affair with Islam, they're strange bedfellows. They both hate the West. They both hate Christianity, so that's why they're in cahoots. But as we know, as soon as Islam takes up residence, the first ones to get their heads chopped off will be these lefty loonies. I mean, it's madness, but that's when you hate that strongly, you tend to get strange bedfellows. So, oh yeah, it's expected. Muslims, as individuals, we seek to reach out to, befriend, love them, share the truth with them. But as a political ideology, it's got big problems. It is not compatible with democracy. It is not compatible with freedom. It is not compatible with women's rights. On and on it goes. So we have to separate the ideology from the individual. The same with anything. The homosexual ideology is dangerous. It's costing all kinds of grief and mayhem. But we can love individual Muslims, reach out to them, befriend them. But again, the left doesn't get this. It makes no sense to them that we can actually love people and yet not approve of certain ideologies or philosophies.
Exactly. To them, I think if I'm trying to understand a lefty's thinking correctly, if you don't embrace it, you are a hater.
Yep.
They don't know how to differentiate. They don't have the mental capacity, and I don't even mean that as I'm not even trying to insult them by saying that. I literally think that they've been so indoctrinated that they lack that thinking ability. They lack the capacity to differentiate between the ideology and the person. They don't know how to separate it. Like they malfunction.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, it's the notion of tolerance. I mean, the old understanding was we could differ with somebody and yet accept them as a person, right? I disagree with what you have to say, but I can approve of you as a person. That's the old understanding of tolerance. The new understanding or misunderstanding is, look, if you don't agree fully with what I say or what I do, you're somehow a hate-filled bigot and
Yeah.
you're being intolerant. So we've totally turned the notion of tolerance on its head,
Yeah.
and the left is playing this for all it's worth. It's the whole victim mentality, the whole, everybody hates me, everything's hate speech. Look, you can disagree with somebody without hating them, but the left doesn't get it. They try to conflate these things. So every time you say something they don't like, guess what? You're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a hater, and on it goes.
Yeah, it's really, really pathetic. But yeah, like I was so shocked when I saw that. I was like, whoa, he has a hate page. Like
I
you have
got
a whole
many of them.
biography. But yeah, the only thing they got right is your education. Congratulations.
Well, that's right. That's right. They got that right. The rest is off. But now, mind you, if you keep up the good work, pretty soon you'll get your own hate page. So hang in there. You'll get one too.
That's funny. Well, I've interviewed many hated people,
Yeah.
like Fraser Anning.
Yep.
I interviewed him, and it was the most views I ever got in one sitting, which I didn't expect, but it was great. But yeah, people because I interviewed him, I automatically became on the fringes. I'm
Yep.
like far right. It's silly because if I was far right, I'd just acknowledge it. People on the far right say, yeah, I'm far right. There's no such thing as the Holocaust. That's what they say.
Yeah.
If these people are proud of being far right and they say what they say because they say it. Like, if
Yep.
I was far right, I'd just say it. I'm not though. I don't. It's not really something that bothers me to admit if it were true.
Yep.
Yeah. I had another question and I just lost it. But let me have a look at something else. So you write for creation.com. That's obviously because you are a creationist, not an evolutionist, correct?
Well, look, creation.com, like probably 100 other websites, have used my articles. I'm happy to share. Getting truth out in the public arena is important. So there's zillions of groups that are always using my stuff, whether they ask me or they just pinch it. I'm just happy that it gets out there. As to that issue, oh yeah, I think there's real problems with evolution. As even secular scientists admit, some of my recent articles have been book reviews of some key scientists, biologists, and others who have real issues with evolution. But simply because you affirm the biblical account that there is a God and therefore intelligent design, a creator, you get thrown into all these baskets. Oh, well, you're some kind of fighting fundy maniac who doesn't believe in science, doesn't believe in this and that. So, same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Do you believe that the movement here is extremely fractured?
Oh, well, there's always, there can be divisions within the right, just like there's plenty of divisions within the left.
Really? I don't see the division on the left.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean,
like they have their shit together in that respect, and the people on the right are completely fractured. That person doesn't like that person. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
That person doesn't like that person. I don't want to associate with you. Whereas, if I could talk to everyone, and put all the personal stuff behind me, I would. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, look, I mean, there's no question that the left, despite its appearances, is full of as many divisions as anything on the right. I mean, just take what happened yesterday. Bob Brown, the Tasmanian Green, running against wind farms. Now, the ABC hasn't even reported this because this is so against their narrative. Here's Bob Brown, the arch greenie, all of a sudden saying wind farms, which is the love of the left and the love of the Greens, are actually not a good thing. So the ABC is in a real quandary here. They don't even want to report the story because it's showing division within the left. But look, there's the right. There's several. Well, first of all, there's I've written about this before on my website. American conservatism tends to be much more Christian based, partly because there's more Christians in America. Australian conservatism is probably much less Christian based. So, as a case in point, go to Sky News any evening, right? You got a lot of good conservative voices. The great majority of them are not Christians. Many are atheists, many are agnostics, whether it's a Paul Murray, Andrew Boat, on and on it goes. Rita Panahay, they're all non Christians. They have a lot of good conservatism, but because they're not Christian, they can sometimes, sometimes they can be weak on areas I wish they were stronger on. They can be weak at times on the pro-life issues. They can be weak at times on homosexuality. So there's also this libertarian conservative divide. Libertarians simply hate big government, and so they don't want government involvement in anything. Conservatives, on the other hand, see a place for government, and there is a place for some restrictions. We don't want open slather on pornography. We don't want open slather on prostitution. We don't want open slather on abortion. So the libertarian conservative split is real, both here and overseas, as in America. So, yeah, there's always going to be differences. I've got friends in all the camps. I got libertarian friends. I got conservative friends. I got Christian conservative friends. I got pagan conservative friends. I try to get along with all of them as much as I can.
Do you have Muslim friends and gay friends? There's an interesting.
Well, look, to some extent, I mean, mind you, I got gays and Muslims who come to my website saying they agree with me.
Oh, there you go.
On certain issues.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Oh, look. I mean, in fact, we used to work together with Muslim groups we had a family council of Victoria that had a lot of different groups, and that did include Muslim groups. So, look, this is what we call co-belligerency. We can work together with various groups on at least limited objectives. I'll work with a Muslim or any number of other groups on, say, the pro-life issues.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't agree on a lot of their positions, including other Christian groups who might be more theologically off the rails. But if we can work together on some life issues, family issues, that I'm willing to do, even though I won't agree with them theologically. So there's a place, you can work together sometimes.
But what's funny is there's a woman named Katie Hopkins.
Yep.
And she recently released a video about something that's going on in England, and it was really interesting. I actually wrote a post about it on my Facebook page. And basically, the Muslims are quite rightfully, I actually agree with the Muslims. And I agree with Muslims actually on several issues, which I think surprises people. But I don't agree with them, obviously, theologically either. But on some issues, I absolutely do. And in this particular circumstance, obviously, we know that ordinarily Islam lines up with the left. That's just how they've married at this stage. They're married, they're together, whatever. But in this case, the school is teaching children about transgenderism, homosexuality, and it's teaching them from like such a young age. Like it's taking it out of the parents' hands, and these morals that parents and churches should be teaching their kids is now being taught by the state, and that's obviously a serious concern. And so these Muslims are protesting outside the school completely peacefully. They genuinely are doing it very peacefully. They're just standing out there with placards saying, we don't want this happening. They've been doing it for 8 weeks straight.
Yep.
And I agree with them. They're right.
Yep.
They are absolutely right on that. And so if Christians and Muslims and people like Katie Hopkins, who I don't think is necessarily a Christian, maybe she's culturally Christian, can all agree on that, then that shows it's like left versus left, but this time it's like the Muslims are siding with the Christian worldview. It's really interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And
look, again, that's co-belligerency. I'm happy to support a Muslim family protesting outside of a school with stupid sex ed and so on programs. I'll work with them. That's fine. And the same with Katie Hopkins. About 5 or 10 years ago, she was she wasn't exactly conservative. She'd wrote, terribly, say, pro-euthanasia pieces. I think I even wrote articles taking her on when she was doing this. But now she's getting more conservative. She's, supporting Tommy Robinson, supporting,
Yeah.
we got to watch out for unchecked immigration, the whole
Do you
bit.
know
So
her?
yeah,
Can I?
I'll side with her. She, as you say, she's probably not at all a Christian, but
Mm,
she's an ally on many key issues. So I'm
yeah.
willing to work together with those who share similar views, at least for various tactical purposes.
Yeah, this is true. According to that hate piece I just read out before, you hated Trump
Yeah.
because he's a billionaire. Is that true?
No, I
No.
didn't. I
No,
never said I hated Trump because he was a billionaire.
what did you say?
Before the election, I'm an American, so
Yeah.
before the election, when the Republicans had their various nominees, right, I said, look, there's a lot of good people here that I'd prefer over Trump. Ted Cruz was one, a
Mm,
good, solid, constitutional, consistent Christian
mm,
conservative. He would have been my main pick.
mm-hmm,
Whereas Trump before then had been buddies with the Democrats, buddies
mm,
with the Clintons. He wasn't known as a hardcore conservative. So
no.
for that reason, I wrote a number of pieces before the election saying, let's be careful. He's not my main choice.
Mm,
However, having said that, I sure am glad Hillary did not get in. And
mm,
I'm glad now that Trump is in, and on many fronts, not all of them, but on most fronts, he's doing quite good. He's doing good on the
mm,
abortion front. He's doing good on immigration. He's doing good on a lot of issues. So hey, I'm glad he's there. That doesn't mean I'm incoherent or can't think straight. It means, in a fallen world, you deal with what you've got. I give me a Trump any day over a Clinton.
coherent.
You know, Morrison is not perfect. Give me a Morrison any day over a Bill Shorten. So come on, same thing.
Yeah. Because I think something that I'm similar to you. I think people assume I love Trump because I just always loved him. I didn't. I
Yeah,
was the same as you. I didn't necessarily know much about Ted Cruz, but since I've seen Ted Cruz debate Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders is just so stupid,
yeah,
and Ted Cruz is so eloquent and intelligent, and actually has facts to back up his statements regarding the healthcare system. I think that's the debate they had was on healthcare, which I watched. Anyway,
yep.
I wanted, if everyone out there thinks I'm a racist, I wanted, I forgot his name. Oh, the Republican African American. I forgot his name.
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson. Yeah, Dr. Ben
Yeah,
Carson. He was my pick. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, Ben
I
Carson.
like them too. Yeah,
Yeah, he's pro-life. He's incredibly intelligent. He came from a single mother.
yeah,
The mother used to lie to her children and pretend that she was correcting their work when she really wasn't. Like, what a good mom.
yeah,
Lying
uh,
to things like that. Like,
yeah.
I loved
He's
him.
great. Yep.
Yeah, he was my pick. And then my other pick was Carly Fiorina, because
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
like this Christian.
Wasn't bad. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she overcame like cancer and just really, really interesting stories. But we got Trump, and he's done
Yep.
great.
Huh? That's right.
What hasn't he done well on? If
Oh, look, he's
you were to sort of
a
pick
little bit
something.
a bit of a mixed bag on some issues with homosexuality. Sometimes he does good things, sometimes he does dumb things. I mean, he's not perfect. Nobody is. But overwhelmingly, again, standing up to the establishment, draining the swamp, standing up to the EU, standing up to the loony left. Look, it took me a while to think this way, but I think we needed somebody like that who is so outside of the mainstream, who could, he didn't care about what the establishment thinks. He doesn't care what the media thinks. So sometimes he says and tweets dumb things, but hey, the thing is so desperate in America that we probably need a guy like Trump to make it happen. So I've come around to see that, yeah, I think, he's the man for the job at this time, and I'm glad he's there.
Yeah, I did. Well, you just said the homosexuality thing. don't you think, despite being a Christian, don't you think it's a good thing that he wants to decriminalize homosexuality in other countries so that gay people are not being tortured in the Middle East? Don't you think that's a good initiative?
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, look, it depends what exactly he means by that and
Oh,
what
I
that
suppose.
results in. I mean, sure. I mean, in the West, it's already decriminalized long ago.
Sure.
And on that issue, as you know, there's three steps always that the law can do in relation to something. It can prohibit something,
Mm.
it can permit something, or it can promote something. In the West, we've gone through all three. Now we are actively promoting everything about the homosexual, the transgender lifestyle. It's gone from prohibition to mere permitting, live and leave. Now we're actively promoting it. So it really depends what this call of Trump is with other countries. I mean, there's not all that many countries that are really doing horrible things to homosexuals. And if they are, sure, there's a case to be made. Let's, we can remove some of the more austere restrictions, obviously, but there's been other areas as well. He's appointed various homosexuals to somewhat high places in the cabinet, which is not exactly family friendly and the like. But look,
Mm.
he's done other things that have been good, cutting away the whole push for transgenderism in the military and so on. So there, he's been a bit of a mixed bag, and again, far better than anything Clinton would have been.
Yeah. Are you happy that he moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem?
Oh yeah, look, I think that I'm pro-Israel. I think this was a brave move, and it certainly wouldn't have happened with any Democrat. So he's doing a lot of things that we have to give him credit for, and which is why he gets so much hatred, so much abuse. He's
Mm.
doing a lot of the right things, and more power to him. And the good thing is, as the left gets more and more loony, the 23 Democratic candidates they got now running for the next election, they're all doing themselves to be who can be the most nut job, hyper left idiot. That's good news for Trump because, Americans are going to say, we'd much rather have Trump than these madmen.
Yeah. Why do you think Israel, this is me not being, I'm not being anti-Israel or pro-Israel right now. I'm just asking you an objective question. Why does Israel require so much assistance from the West? Why can't they help themselves if they can build up a country in after if they can build up a country after the World War, and they can acquire this land and build it into what it's become and make it an amazing infrastructure and do all of the great things that they've done, why do they require so much outside help from the West?
Well, we simply bear in mind this fact that it's a teeny little speck of land, a small piece of geography, surrounded by over a dozen hostile countries, all of which have sworn to drive it into the sea, all of which want to see Israel eliminated.
Uh,
So this is a David and Goliath battle. It's absolutely surrounded by hundreds of millions of hostile people who think it has no right to exist. So it's courageously doing its thing to protect itself, defend itself, but it certainly needs the help of countries like America, and I'm glad America and others are willing to give it that kind of help.
yes, and I can acknowledge and that it's surrounded by so many enemies because the the Quran and the Hadith and the Bukhari all teach that the people of the cross, Christians and Jews, should be eliminated. Like we are their enemy. We should be hated. I understand all of that, but at the same time, doesn't Israel work alongside Saudi Arabia? Isn't this like a known fact? So like, why are we helping people that are working together in other ways that apparently are funding things that they shouldn't be funding? Do you know what I mean? Like it's sort of this, it's sort of like I'm on board, but I'm on the fence.
Yeah, well, look, to say that we support Israel is not to say that we support everything about it, that it can do no
That's,
wrong. That's the
yes.
first point you'd make. Secondly, when your very existence is under threat, well, look, sometimes you'll take any help you can get. If that means cozying up to other Middle Eastern countries that are less than ideal,
Mm.
Well, look, if you were in that position, you'd probably run with it as well. So again, in a less than perfect world, we have to deal with political realities as they are. And in this case, Israel is in the fight for its life. So sometimes it may have to do alliances and so on with others who are less than ideal.
Mm.
But look, if you want to survive, sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yes. The reason I'm asking you this line of questioning is because I know that you are actively pro-Israel, whereas I used to say I'm pro-Israel, pro-Israel, pro-Israel. It was like my main thing for the longest time, and I've sort of backed off that. I'm more on the fence about it now because I've done research on things. So I'm not saying I would never say I'm anti-Israel because I can't. My faith in Christ just doesn't call me to say that. But I'm certainly a lot more open to research and to different things. So I'm more on the fence about it now. But I'm certainly open. And something else is that why is it that every single white nation, by white nation I mean maybe European nation, British colonized nation, or even countries like Spain, where my father is from, not Canada, the UK, France, all of these countries have this agenda by the Marxist agenda, which many would claim is the globalist agenda. That's another word that's used in Marxism, the globalist agenda. And many would say many claim it's Jewish people, but I would claim that globalism has a lot of different people in that particular category, but that those people are pushing multiculturalism, turbocharged multiculturalism that is erasing the original people that built the countries. Yet Israel is free of any multiculturalism. Do you have an answer for that?
Well,
That's the claim.
Yep. To backtrack to the first half of your question, to
Yeah.
say that we need to support Israel is not to say that they're without fault. And again, as Christians, we look critically at every people, every country.
Of
For
course.
example, Israel is largely a secular nation. It's not exactly, it's got a large homosexual contingent, for example. It's got a lot of atheists. So, as a Christian, that doesn't mean we support that. So there's both a Christian and a geopolitical set of reasons why we may want to support Israel, the only democracy of any worth in the Middle East, and so on. As to the other nations and all their agendas, multiculturalism, I mean, well, again, tying it back to Israel, I mean, Arabs and Christians can and do live peacefully in Israel. So there's a place for a proper kind of multiculturalism.
Sure.
America, where I come from, was known as the melting pot. People came from all over because they loved the American dream. They wanted to be part of it. They didn't want to destroy it or take it over or live in little ghettos. They wanted to get into the American success story. So that's a good kind of multiculturalism. The wrong kind, which we often have here in Australia and so much of the West, is where we take in all kinds of people who have no desire whatsoever to fit in, to even learn the language, to accept our values and our beliefs. They want to live in their own ghettos. They want to push their own agenda. And obviously, Muslims who want to, many of which want to set up their own Sharia law and the like. Well, sorry, no country can survive with various sets of law if you don't embrace the law of the land and want to set up your own law. That's a recipe for disaster. So there's a good and a bad kind of multiculturalism, and there's a good and a bad kind of immigration.
I would say that I'm against multiculturalism, but I'm for multiracialism, because multiculturalism means that you're trying to merge a bunch of different ideologies that just won't work cohesively. But with multiracialism, those people who enter the country are required to sort of put their own ideology on the back burner when they're in society and only embrace what they came from in their home. So I would say I'm more for being multiracial because yeah, I've explained myself horribly, but I have a video
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Does that
No,
make
I'm with you on that one.
sense?
We can embrace and accept all kinds of people, but there's a basic minimum that you accept the values, the core beliefs, and cultural practices of the nation you're coming to. If you don't like it, why bother come in the first place? Stay where you are, go somewhere else.
Exactly.
If you so hate America or so hate Australia, why didn't you come here? So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is there multiculturalism? Is there multiracialism in Israel? Because some people argue that it is the Israelis, or not the Israelis, they say that it is the globalists that are pushing that agenda on every other country. But the only country that isn't doing it, which is the country responsible for it, is Israel.
Well, again, as I said, you can have Arabs, Muslims, Christians living in Israel and living pretty well.
And also,
Unlike all the other Middle Eastern countries, you can have, you have women doing well, homosexuals, for good or ill, doing well. So that's probably the most multicultural, the most tolerant, the most pluralistic nation in the entire Middle East.
I would agree with you. I actually do agree with that. I just thought I'd restate the point. Also, they have a lot of there's a faction of Jews called the Falasha Jews, and the Falasha Jews, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, they are known as the Ethiopian Jews, and they are now I don't know how large the contingent of them is, but they are a component to Israel now. They are like considered one of the missing tribes, and so that's in itself multiculturalism or multiracialism, whatever the word is.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Well, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask Bill before we get off? Because we've gone for an hour and a bit. Anyone want to send a super chat? Otherwise, my guest next week will be the I forgot his name. How rude. He's from Culture Watch Resource. Margot, what's his name?
Is it Daniel Seacom? Did you say?
Yes, Daniel Seacom. Thank you. That's right. My guest next week is Daniel Seacom, and he's actually an acquaintance of yours, someone that you know, a colleague.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know them all.
You do. It sounds like you do. Oh, okay, cool. So I don't. It doesn't look like anyone has any actual questions. So that's fine. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on my show. I think some people in the chat were saying, "Oh my God, I feel horrible that I don't know who this guy is," because you've been in the fight for over 30 years. You've been a pioneer in the Australian movement for the family unit, and yes, I'm very honored that I got to interview you. It's been a very good interview. I think I've gotten a lot of information, and yes, everyone, if you want to catch Bill Muehlenberg's articles, you can go on his website, which is in the description box below, and he also has a Facebook page that I didn't add in the description box below, but you can catch it on Facebook by writing Bill Muehlenberg. It'll come up on the search engine, but I'll add it below after the interview is over. Yeah, that's it. Okay, cool. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Next week, I have Daniel Seacom on my show. He's also someone who's in the movement. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Bye, guys. All right, I'm just going to stop the broadcast for a second. Did you want to say bye, or did you want to say anything?
Thanks very much for having me.
Okay.